Yeah, it's legislative.
Right, over and over again.
Something like we're supposed
Senate will please come to order. I believe the senator from Chittenden Central might have some good news for us.
I do, Mr. President. So it's our intention now to, rather than stopping and starting, taking a dinner break, coming back, to gavel in now and finish our business by dinner time. And by dinner time, I mean hopefully 6 o'clock. So we'll see if that pans out, but it looks as though all the pieces are in place to have that happen. The House has completed their business. They had been waiting on one bill, S39. And so, Mr. President, my first request would be that S39, that we suspend our rules in order to take up S39 from the notice calendar for immediate action with the intention of sending it to the Government Operations Committee.
And again, is that a singular motion? When you say with the intention, it would be actually with the action as opposed to intention?
Actually.
Okay. The senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate suspend its rules in order to take up for immediate consideration from the notice calendar S39, an act relating to compensation and benefits for members of the Vermont General Assembly. And with that suspension of rules and action, it will also then be referred to the Committee on Government Operations. Are you ready for the question? Senator from Madison.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are at this position where we are, and I want to thank all of the senators who have thought very carefully about this bill and their position on this bill. We are short on the number that we need to override it, unfortunately, and it's, I think, a sad day for the legislative branch, and I was very much hoping that we would have the votes to be able to increase our compensation. We make less than the average for the country, and I think that that is an unfair compensation for our part-time legislature. And as I said, when this bill came to the floor, this was a bill that was championed by a committee led by and mostly populated by women in the Senate, and also our good friend to my right. And this means a lot to the women in the Senate to be able to be compensated for our work here. But it is what it is, and I am committed to working on this. I have commitment from the minority leader and the majority leader that we will come back to this issue and find a way forward that we can all agree on. And I thank the body for their consideration.
Question, Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is a privilege to serve Vermonters in my capacity as a state senator. And under our current structure, pay and benefits, it's also a great challenge for people without privilege to be here at all. I've asked many young people and lower income people to bring their voices into this space and run, and overwhelmingly, they tell me that they simply can't afford it. I take a pay cut as a social worker to be here. I live paycheck to paycheck, and I work 7 days a week during the session so that I can be here. And I have had to not seek health care because I can't afford adequate health care, and I'm ineligible for employer-sponsored coverage. The barriers to service in the General Assembly are astronomical, and for most average Vermonters, they're actually insurmountable, which is why the demographics of the General Assembly do not match the demographics of Vermont. And this is a problem. This is one of the reasons why we have such a difficult time meeting the needs of average Vermonters. This bill elegantly updated legislative pay to the average Vermont wage, meaning our pay would be tied directly to how well Vermonters are doing. We've seen waves of legislators leave because they cannot afford to be here. And I know that members of this body may not be able to continue serving without this update that is 20 years overdue. I am deeply saddened that we can't move forward with making this update so that we can open the doors of this body to everyday Vermonters to hear their voices as we look to build a stronger and more inclusive Vermont and a stronger, more inclusive General Assembly. Thank you.
The question is, shall the Senate suspend its rules in order to take up S39 off the notice calendar and commit the bill to the Committee on Government Operations? The Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to second those heartfelt comments. I also want to say that I will commit as Senate President Pro Tem to trying my best when we come back in January to forward another bill that gets the bulk of this done. I think this bill was elegant. That was the word that was used. It may be that a slightly skinnier bill will have an easier passage, but either way, we will come back to this issue until we get it right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Orange.
Usually when something comes up for action, we have the reporter to interrogate. Who is the reporter of this proposal to be interrogated?
I would have to check for a moment. Senator from Windsor was the reporter of the bill, and the senator could be interrogated if she so chooses.
No, I would like to interrogate the reporter of the bill.
She has stood for you and is ready to take your questions.
Thank you. There are some of us who voted for this bill a couple months back. We're older. We can survive here without the benefits that the bill calls for. And only speaking for myself as one of the older members, I voted for this bill because we need to attract younger people. If we don't pass this bill, what's the consequence?
I thank the member for his question, and I would suggest to the member that to reflect on the comments that we heard from the previous speaker, because the role of a public servant is one that I think most folks don't take lightly when they choose to run, and there's many considerations that they take into account. And one of the key things can be whether or not you can afford to take the time away from work or not have access to health insurance, which is something we heard in testimony in Senate Government Operations. So I would posit that the outcome of this bill will be that we will not likely see the people who are on who have a financial barrier to service to be able to run for office. And I would worry that we will end up with the same exodus of people we had in previous sessions.
Thank you. Thank you, reporter. It's a difficult challenge for younger people to stand up and say what the reporter of this bill says. We all profess that we want to turn this Senate over to a generation to come along and bring youth and vigor to it. And we can't depend on the few younger members of the Senate to carry this over the finish line. It's easy, Mr. President, to say at this date, well, are there any provisions for age where maybe when people are old enough to retire and have some income, that they would have a different, have a different salary, so we could make it possible for younger folks to be part of the Senate. And I can come back here. I have a retirement package, and fortunately enough, I have a healthcare plan that shows up with an ambulance when something's wrong and gets me back on my feet again. So we have a problem that we're going to be solving, and we, the majority, have the votes to put in place the Senate's future with younger people who will be able to take over when getting picked up with the ambulance isn't enough. And we're not doing it. We all spend a lot of time with our own kids, bringing them along when they're younger to take over for the things that we do. And I think we have a responsibility, those of us that are older, to bring along the next generation to make the decisions that we're comfortable making in their absence. Disappointed that this is what we've come to. Thank you, Mr. President.
The question is, shall the Senate suspend its rules in order to take off the notice calendar S39 and act relating to compensation and benefits for members of the Vermont General Assembly and to recommit the bill to the Committee on Government Operations? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have suspended your rules and taken S39 off the notice calendar and recommitted it to the Committee on Government Operations. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I would ask that the Senate suspend its rules in order to take up H 386, pending entry on the notice calendar. That is an act relating to approval of amendments to the charter of the town of Brattleboro.
Now, the Senator has moved that the Senate suspend its rules to take up H 386, pending entry on the notice calendar for consideration. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have suspended your rules in order to take up H 386 for consideration. With that, you will hear a few words that I will be saying a few times today. Please bear with me. On May 27, 2023, the Honorable Philip B. Scott, Governor, vetoed H 386, an act relating to approval of the amendments to the charter of the town of Brattleboro, and returned it to the House and submitted a message explaining his objections to the bill. A copy of the veto message is contained in today's House calendar on page 4021. The authority of the governor to veto a bill passed by both houses of the General Assembly is found in Section 11 of Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the State of Vermont. By reason of the wording of Section 11 of Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the State of Vermont, the Senate is obligated to reconsider H 386 if the House votes to override the governor's veto. The House has already considered the bill and voted to pass the bill, notwithstanding the governor's refusal to approve the bill. The question that you will be voting on is as follows. Shall the bill pass, notwithstanding the governor's refusal to approve the bill? A yes vote means you want to override the governor's veto and pass the bill. A no vote means you want to sustain the governor's veto. As required by the Constitution, the vote will be by roll call. 2/3 of the members who are present must pass the bill over the objections of the governor. Otherwise, the veto of the governor will be sustained. The question before the Senate is debatable. Upon conclusion of the debate, the Secretary shall call the roll. The question is, shall the bill pass, notwithstanding the governor's refusal to approve the bill? Are you ready for the question? If so, the Secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Baru.
Yes.
Senator Bray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
No.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
No.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Collmore.
No.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Bueck.
Yes.
Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Harrison.
Yes.
Senator Hashim.
Yes.
Senator Ingalls.
No.
Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator McDonald.
Yes.
Senator Mazza.
No.
Senator McCormick.
Yes.
Senator Norris.
No.
Senator Pershling.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale.
Yes.
Senator Cedar.
No.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Bihowski.
Yes.
Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Weeks.
No.
Senator Westman.
No.
Senator White.
Yes.
Senator Williams.
No.
Senator Renner.
Yes.
Please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 20. Those voting nay, 10. And 2/3 of the members present having voted in favor of passage of the bill, the governor's veto has been overridden. Do you mind if we do the resolution prior to continuing the suspension?
As you would.
We have up for consideration a resolution JRH 6. Please listen to the reading of the resolution.
JRH 6, joint resolution authorizing limited remote joint committee voting through the first Friday of the 2024 adjourned session. Resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives that through Friday, January 5, 2024, each member of a joint committee is authorized to vote remotely in that committee. 1, if the member has tested positive for COVID-19 and is within a required period of isolation as provided by the Vermont Department of Health guidelines. And 2, for no more than 3 days for any other reason. And be it further resolved, such a member shall notify the committee chair or co-chairs as applicable, and the committee clerk that the member is exercising this remote voting authority and shall count toward a committee quorum. And be it further resolved, the committee clerk shall record any vote cast by the member as a remote vote and shall track the number of days the member exercises the member's non-COVID-19 remote voting authority.
Now you've heard the reading of the resolution. The question is, shall the Senate adopt the resolution on its part? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it. You have adopted JRH 6. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I'd like to make a two-part motion, although a single motion, that we take H509 up for immediate action pending entry on the notice calendar. And actually, it's only one part. So we'd like to bring up H509 pending notice and suspend the rules to do that.
Senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate suspend its rules in order to take H509 up for immediate consideration pending entry on the notice calendar. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have suspended your rules in order to take up H509. Here we go. On May 27, 2023, the Honorable Philip B. Scott, Governor, vetoed H509, an act relating to approval of amendments to the voter qualification provisions of the Charter of the City of Burlington, and returned it to the House and submitted a message explaining his objections to the bill. A copy of the veto message is contained in today's House calendar at page 4024. The authority of the governor to veto a bill passed by both houses of the General Assembly is found in Section 11 of Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the State of Vermont. By reason of the wording of Section 11 of Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the State of Vermont, the Senate is obligated to reconsider H509 if the House votes to override the governor's veto. The House has already considered the bill and voted to pass the bill, notwithstanding the governor's refusal to approve the bill. The question that you will be voting on is as follows. Shall the bill pass, notwithstanding the governor's refusal to approve the bill? A yes vote means you want to override the governor's veto and pass the bill. A no vote means you want to sustain the governor's veto. As required by the Constitution, the vote will be by roll call. 2/3 of the members who are present must pass the bill over the objections of the governor, otherwise the veto of the governor will be sustained. The question before the Senate is debatable. Upon conclusion of the debate, the Secretary shall call the roll. The question is, shall the bill pass, notwithstanding the governor's refusal to approve the bill? Are you ready for the question? If so, the Secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Baruch.
Yes.
Senator Bray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
No.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson,
Yes.
Senator Collmore,
No.
Senator Cummings,
Yes.
Senator Jewett,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Harrison,
Yes.
Senator Hashim,
Yes.
Senator Ingalls,
No.
Senator Kitchell,
Yes.
Senator Lyons,
Yes.
Senator McDonald,
Yes.
Senator Mazza,
No.
Senator McCormick,
Yes.
Senator Norris,
No.
Senator Pershing,
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes.
Senator Starr,
No.
Senator Bihowski,
Yes.
Senator Watson,
Yes.
Senator Wheaton,
No.
Senator Westman,
No.
Senator White,
Yes.
Senator Williams,
No.
Senator Renner,
Yes.
Please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 21. Those voting nay, 9. 2/3 of the members present having voted in favor of the passage of the bill, the governor's veto has been overridden. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I would ask that the Senate suspend its rules in order to take up H-171, an act relating to adult protective services, otherwise known as the companion.
Now, the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate suspend its rules in order to take up for immediate consideration pending entry on the notice calendar H-171, an act relating to adult protective services. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have suspended your rules in order to take up for immediate consideration H-171. We now have up for consideration H-171, and the pending question is, shall the Senate concur with the House further proposal of amendment? Are you ready for that question? Senator from Caledonia.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment that has passed the other body was considered by 3 committees this afternoon, and we would recommend that we concur with this amendment. What it does is address the transition and the ending of our hotel motel program that got created at the time of the pandemic. And we had some discussion around it, it's certainly in the budget adjustment, and then again when we passed the budget. As we have got more information after adjournment, we have 2 things that have happened, one of which is the governor himself has extended the time limit in recognition that more work needs to be done in order to address the housing needs of the population that has been defined as vulnerable, and that would be the group that we had identified in the Budget Adjustment Act. And we also have had some of us weekly briefings from the Agency of Human Services, and had been under the understanding that more advanced work had been completed before July 1st, only to learn that the RFP and request of letters of interest from communities had not gone out until after adjournment. So as we're looking at the extension, which the executive branch had implemented and also carries a spending price tag, our conclusion was that we did not think that the necessary work and the resources that would have to be put in place by communities to provide alternatives for this vulnerable population, about half of whom are either Social Security or SSI disability. Some are families as well, and they meet the definition of vulnerable. So in light of that more recent experience, our view was that we really would concur with the governor that an extension was necessary, and we did not feel that that all of this would be able to be put in place by communities and the administration in 84 days. If in fact that can happen, more power to the work that is ahead. In the last couple of weeks, the organization, the development of teams, the reaching out to communities has really been impressive. But we were starting this phase out without a really good understanding of the demographics, knowing how many families were involved, family size, and what those housing needs would be. So our concern was to give, as the intent states, sufficient time for this work to occur. And we want to impress on everyone the urgency of the work ahead. And so you will see that there is a time frame for this transition to end. And it's a fixed caseload. The vulnerable individuals receiving the benefit as of June 30th. And then for other people beyond that date, it's the General Assistance Program that does provide emergency housing, but would continue in play. So what we're dealing with is the unwinding of this benefit. Some of these households, in fact, have been residing in the same room in a motel for maybe 2 years. And certainly it is going to be a difficult transition to make and to have alternatives offered. But the bill provides that everyone in this caseload would be offered alternative housing by April 1st. And the reason is to align that with the end of the adverse weather provision that is already there in general assistance. We also have found that some of what we thought was happening had not happened. And so there is very specific responsibility given to your Joint Fiscal Committee to really monitor the progress. Obviously, you do not want to wait for 1,200 households to be served the 1st of April. And there has to be a plan to work with the families over that period of time. So your Joint Fiscal Committee, as well as reports, monthly reports to the policy committees are provided for. We're also asking, and I'm not going to outline it, you can read it yourself, the information that we are requesting that we be provided, because our experience was that we did not have that information. And surprisingly, to a large extent, the administration did not either, because the benefit was structured as you needed a motel room, and it was provided and it was funded through FEMA, so that there wasn't a lot of information that went along with the payment. As a result, there was no expectation around working with case managers. There was not a requirement under our general assistance program. There is a requirement that you can contribute a portion of your income for the shelter, and the 30% comes from the HUD standard. So you'll see that there are now expectations that are being made on the part of the households that are receiving this benefit. This has been a very costly program. I mentioned, I think at the time I presented the budget, it was around $200 million. So this bill is, or this amendment is our attempt to give sufficient time to recognize that a lot of work needs to be done. Communities are really coming together, recognizing it. We do not want to in any way take away that sense of urgency, because time moves very quickly when you're doing this kind of work. So I would say that it is our best effort. Now, what we're doing is, I want to be clear, is no way reducing any of the appropriations that are in the budget. People might be concerned, gee, are you going to take money away from this initiative or whatever? You may recall in the budget we had 6 contingent appropriations. We believe that revenues are coming in higher than forecasted, and so we did not alter those at all. Those included a purchase of a house for Soteria, also money for recovery housing. And so I just want to assure everyone that the money that we're talking about is really like a 7th contingent appropriation. But we don't have the specific amounts until we get through the end of the fiscal year and through closeout. There's also a provision that if money has been appropriated and has not been necessary to be spent within the fiscal year, that would be carried forward and also be made available. We believe between the two that we have the money to bridge us, and then when we come back in January in the budget adjustment, we can then see the experience. Right now, we're starting with 1,200, but we'll certainly be monitoring the progress, and we will have this on our agenda for the July Joint Fiscal Committee meeting, again for the November meeting. And we believe that we have got the ability to bridge. We're really building on the extension that the governor put in place and getting us to the adverse weather. And we want to commend the people that have been working so hard to respond. There's a lot of heavy lifting ahead. I think the complexity of some of the households receiving the benefit have become more apparent. And it's much more than simply having the Department of Children and Families processing a payment. There's a lot of information here. We also are looking at the money that we had appropriated for housing in the big bill, and working with the administration, we are allocating or directing out of those appropriations money specifically to those housing strategies that will bring housing online as quickly as possible. So there is, it will notice manufactured housing, but also there's more money going into the Vermont Housing Improvement Program, and that is to help apartments that are empty right now, but with some with repair and work can be brought online. That is certainly, experience has shown us a very expeditious way of increasing housing capacity. And so our goal is to really focus on the very investments that give us a very quicker response. We certainly don't want to in any way not continue our work, because we know that we are going to have to work continuously on addressing our housing availability and affordable housing out into the future. There's a great deal more work to be done. So the purpose of this amendment would be to provide more time, provide continuation of this benefit, make sure that we are exercising our oversight responsibility, gathering the information, gathering and having progress reports on what is happening in the field, and in no way want to say that there's not a great deal of work that is going to be ahead. But it's with all that we are concurring with this amendment. I would make it clear that this is something that we've been working on jointly, and then with the administration, because obviously this is an important action to be taken and will require their full support and cooperation as well. So I would say that after we had a presentation by Legislative Council, and as someone who has been involved in the development of the amendment, I would say that I felt we did not take an official vote. It was a straw poll, but there was unanimous support for the amendment and the work that and recognition of the need for more time to really get us to where we need to be. So that is the amendment, and we would ask that this body concur. Thank you.
The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of further proposal of amendment to H-171? Senator from Chittenden Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will not add to the good words from the senator from Caledonia. I do want to give her thanks for spending the time and effort, and others for taking time to put this together. Senate Health and Welfare Committee last fall asked and worked with the Human Services Committee and the other body to look at what we would need for a transition plan, and asking the administration for that transition plan away from the hotel program, motel program, and away from federal funds, because we knew that they were disappearing. That plan was put forth in a fragmentary approach and was never realized. You can't have a plan come to fulfillment unless you actually have some implementation steps. And while we know how hard our Department of Children and Families and our Agency of Human Services has worked to help people find more permanent housing, the plan has not been carried out. I do think that this proposal before us is the right step to take. It takes the step beyond the Budget Adjustment Act that we worked on in January and February, and it will help us help people who are so greatly in need of some permanent housing and care. It's more than housing, and we know that. It's about the care that the folks need who are disabled or might need a nursing home. So I just want to reiterate my thanks to the senator from Caledonia for her work on this and for the pro tem and his work on this. And I ask all of us to support this proposal. It is an important step forward. It is what all of us have been looking for as we change away from the hotel and motel program. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for everyone for their incredibly hard work on this. May I inquire of the presenter of the amendment? I don't know, actually no.
I believe the senator from Caledonia is probably most prepared to answer questions relating to the House proposal of amendment to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. On page 4, in subsection D, I'm wondering, the line reads, the household is asked to leave the hotel or motel housing due to misconduct. Is misconduct defined somewhere in statute?
Mr. President, that question has come up, and in fact, it is a provision within our existing general assistance program. It is going to be based on the facts of the case and would be, if there's a dispute, it would be subject to appeal.
Okay. And does the Agency of Human Services oversee that appeal?
Yes, the Human Services Board, and within the general assistance program, if we're talking about emergency housing, there's an expedited appeal process.
Excellent. Thank you.
Question is, Senator from Chittenden North.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to also express my gratitude to everyone who worked on this in the last couple of weeks. It occurs to me that as of April 1st of 2024, we might have to revisit this in case not everyone is housed at that point. And I wanted to reflect on some of the concerns. One was just mentioned by my colleague in front of me about misconduct. I think that could be capricious, and I think it's really important that it's defined and just fairly offered and adjudicated so that people aren't tossed out of the program because they have a personal disagreement with someone who's leading it, for example. I'm also concerned, and I've heard comments from folks about this 30% of their gross household income having to be contributed to this program. We're trying to find housing for people. How can someone who's without housing ever put away enough money if we're taking a third of their income and putting it into this program? Just food for thought. And finally, this provision to have to accept an offer of housing placement within 48 hours. Geographically or for other reasons, there may be cause for someone not to want to accept a placement, and I would hope that that would also be revisited. Finally, I'm concerned that there were a number of households, several hundred in fact, more than several hundred, who were transitioned out of this program before June 30th, who are not part of this program, and I wish they had been. Thank you.
Senator from Caledonia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would never say that anything is absolutely perfect. I think certainly the misconduct is going to be fact-based, and there's a process to adjudicate that. Regarding the last issue, I want to be clear. When we closed down the benefit for the group that didn't meet the vulnerable category, we did hear that, in fact, some people came forward and said, but in fact, we believe we do qualify under the vulnerable. They have been brought back into the program. And so they have received several letters asking them to report this information. If you know of someone who you believe should have been transitioned into the vulnerable population, there's an opportunity to do so between now and June 30th. So I just want to be clear that the door has not been closed on those households that might have had their benefit terminated May 31st for not meeting. That's one of the problems in terms of having information around the individual cases. For someone who, the example was, we wouldn't know unless someone tells us that they're pregnant. So I just want to say that we have seen the numbers go up closer to 1,200. They were at 1,160 or so because individuals who were the benefit terminated under the May 31st deadline have been brought in. So there is an opportunity, and those who have expressed it and qualify have actually had their benefit reinstated. Thank you.
Question is Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would direct senators to page 1 under legislative intent. I'll just read briefly. It is the intent of the General Assembly that vulnerable Vermonters should continue to be housed while sufficient time is allocated for developing alternative housing placements, including emergency housing beds, and furthering community collaboration. It says specifically that it is the intent of the General Assembly, but it is beyond that. This also represents the intent of the administration. And that is not an ordinary state of affairs. And I would like to personally and publicly thank the governor for his part in producing what you see in front of you. So it would have been possible in another state of affairs, nationally, where partisan politics get mixed up very quickly. It would have been possible for us to be wrangling over this. As it is, we are here on the first day of this veto session looking to adjourn by dinner time because the House, the Senate, and the governor together saw this need, understood that it would require more time and a more fulsome process than was currently in place. And so these 13 pages were put together over a matter of several weeks with all of those parties, and I think it's to be commended all the way around. I did want to issue a couple of special thanks. The senator from Caledonia, as always, stepped in and created something out of nothing that solves the problem in an elegant way. And I would also like to thank my leadership team for working with us on it, and Ashley, my chief of staff, who worked on this morning and night for the last month. And I can't imagine what we would be doing without those individuals at this point. So this is not perfect. This 13-page bill is not meant to solve the issue of homelessness forever in the state of Vermont. This 13-page bill is meant to deal with the issue of these 1,200 households who are transitioning out of the program, but for whom beds were not ready. And so we have recognized that. We have put in place funds and processes to deal with that. And my hope is that none of those 1,200 households will wind up in a place that is inappropriate or less than caring for them. So with that said, Mr. President, I hope that the Senate will concur with this amendment, and I would ask that they do so.
Question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of further amendment on H 171? Are you ready for the question?
Roll call.
Roll call has been requested by the senator from Chittenden Southeast, I believe. Are you ready for the question? If so, Secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Baru.
Yes.
Senator Bray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
Yes.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Collmore.
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Ewing.
Yes.
Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Harrison.
Yes.
Senator Hashim.
Yes.
Senator Ingalls.
Yes.
Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator McDonald.
Yes.
Senator Mazza.
Yes.
Senator McCormick.
Yes.
Senator Norris.
Yes.
Senator Pershing.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Bihowski.
Yes.
Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Weeks.
Yes.
Senator Westman.
Yes.
Senator White.
Yes.
Senator Williams.
Yes.
Senator Renner.
Yes.
Please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 30. Those voting nay, 0. And you have concurred with the House further proposal of amendment on H 171. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I would move that the Senate suspend its rules in order to bring up H 217, an act relating to child care, early education, workers' compensation, and unemployment insurance, also known as the Child Care Bill.
Now, the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate suspend its rules in order to take up for immediate consideration pending entry onto the notice calendar, H 217. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it. You have suspended your rules in order to take up H 217. With that, bear with me. On June 6, 2023, the Honorable Philip B. Scott, Governor, vetoed H 217, an act relating to child care, early education, workers' compensation, and unemployment insurance, and returned it to the House and submitted a message explaining his objections to the bill. A copy of the veto message is contained in today's House calendar at page 4018. The authority of the governor to veto a bill passed by both houses of the General Assembly is found in Section 11 of Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the State of Vermont. By reason of the wording of Section 11 of Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the State of Vermont, the Senate is obligated to reconsider H 217 if the House votes to override the governor's veto. The question that you will be voting on is as follows. Shall the bill pass, notwithstanding the governor's refusal to approve the bill? A yes vote means you want to override the governor's veto and pass the bill. A no vote means you want to sustain the governor's veto. As required by the Constitution, the vote will be by roll call. 2/3 of the members who are present must pass the bill over the objections of the governor, otherwise the veto of the governor will be sustained. The question before the Senate is debatable, and upon conclusion of the debate, the secretary shall call the roll. The question is, shall the bill pass, notwithstanding the governor's refusal to approve the bill? Are you ready for the question? If so, the secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Baruch.
Yes.
Senator Bray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
No.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Collmore.
No.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Ewing.
Yes.
Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Harrison.
Yes.
Senator Hashim.
Yes.
Senator Ingalls.
No.
Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator McDonald.
Yes.
Senator Mazza.
Yes.
Senator McCormick.
Yes.
Senator Norris.
No.
Senator Pershing.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Bihowski.
Aye.
Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Weeks.
No.
Senator Westman.
No.
Senator White.
Yes.
Senator Williams.
No.
Senator Renner.
Yes.
Please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 23. Those voting nay, 7. 2/3 of the members present having voted in favor of passage of the bill, the governor's veto has been overridden. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that said, we do have the budget left and 103, but I would like to take a brief recess ask that senators remain near their chairs to confer with the Senate Secretary about messaging what we've done.
We will declare a brief recess until the fall of the gavel. Senate will please come to order.
I was waiting for you.
John, do you mind? The Senate will please come to order. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I would move that the Senate suspend its rules in order to take up from the notice calendar S-103, an act relating to amending the prohibitions against discrimination for immediate action.
Now, the Senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate suspend its rules in order to take up for consideration off of the notice calendar S-103, an act relating to amending the prohibitions against discrimination. Are you ready for the question? Senator, if you did not. Senator from Chittenden Southeast.
Point of inquiry.
Oh, this is true. We have to suspend the rules first.
Yeah, I didn't know if this was.
You were right. Okay. I was inaccurate. My apologies, everyone.
Wait.
The question is, shall the Senate suspend its rules in order to take up for immediate consideration pending, off the notice calendar S-103? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have suspended your rules in order to take up S-103. We have before us S-103, an act relating to amending the prohibitions against discrimination. We have a House proposal of amendment to the Senate bill. The question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment? Senator from Chittenden Southeast.
You're not reading.
We do not read it again, actually.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. First, Mr. President, this is a bill that gratefully we had the opportunity to discuss in your Senate Economic Development Committee today, but we didn't. Our esteemed members didn't have to necessarily suspend the rules for this, and I just want to appreciate our ranking member on the committee, the senator from Franklin, for hearing some of the changes and allowing us to move forward with this bill today without objection. This is a relatively small but important bill that folks may remember. It is a workforce-related bill, and it covers expansion of who is considered a plaintiff for equal pay, the definition of harassment, not requiring that it be severe or pervasive, and something that's colloquially called the do not darken my door provision, or not requiring that someone no longer work at an employer for their lifetime should they bring a case of harassment. The House made some very small changes. They added gender identity and sexual orientation to those protected classes covered under these provisions, and our Attorney General's office is fairly confident that with gender already being included in a lot of these protections, the federal government was already interpreting that to include gender identity and sexual orientation, but it was welcome that we spell that out further. And they included a privacy provision so that a employee doesn't have to disclose any of this information to an employer, and that also thereby means an employer isn't liable for information they didn't know, but they would generally fall under the same provisions that exist in ADA regulations, et cetera, about the types of questions they can ask. So it's kind of a shall not construe provision to ensure that none of this is construed to mean that employers are starting to ask employees more invasive information. Those are the major changes. We were going to take a more formal vote tomorrow morning in committee, but I believe we have consensus to advance this, and we would appreciate the support of the body, of the chamber.
Question is, shall the Senate concur with the House proposal of amendment? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have concurred with the House proposal of amendment on S-103. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe, amazingly enough, at this point, all of our work is done except the governor's override of the budget, page 494. So I would ask that pending entry on the notice calendar, we take up H 494, an act relating to making appropriations for the support of government for immediate action. And
now the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate suspend its rules pending entry on the notice calendar, take up H4, excuse me. Yeah, it's on the notice calendar, excuse me. Off the notice calendar, H494. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have suspended your rules in order to take up H494. With that, at least for the final time for today, please bear with me. On May 27, 2023, the Honorable Philip B. Scott, Governor, vetoed H494, an act relating to making appropriations in the support of government, and returned it to the House, and submitted a message explaining his objections to the bill. A copy of the veto message is contained in today's House calendar at page 4022. The authority of the governor to veto a bill passed by both houses of the General Assembly is found in Section 11 of Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the State of Vermont. By reason of the wording of Section 11 of Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the State of Vermont, the Senate is obligated to reconsider H494 if the House votes to override the governor's veto. The House has already considered the bill and voted to pass the bill, notwithstanding the governor's refusal to approve the bill. The question that you will be voting on is as follows. Shall the bill pass, notwithstanding the governor's refusal to approve the bill? A yes vote means you want to override the governor's veto and pass the bill. A no vote means you want to sustain the governor's veto. As required by the Constitution, the vote will be by roll call. 2/3 of the members who are present must pass the bill over the objections of the governor, otherwise the veto of the governor will be sustained. The question before the Senate is debatable, and upon conclusion of the debate, the Secretary shall call the roll. The question is, shall the bill pass, notwithstanding the governor's refusal to approve the bill? Are you ready for the question? If so, the Secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Baru.
yes.
Senator Bray.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
No.
Senator Campion.
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Collmore.
No.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Buick.
Yes.
Senator Hardy.
Yes.
Senator Harrison.
Yes.
Senator Hashim.
Yes.
Senator Ingalls.
Yes.
Senator Kitchell.
Yes.
Senator Lyons.
Yes.
Senator McDonald.
Yes.
Senator Mazza.
Yes.
Senator McCormack.
Yes.
Senator Norris.
No.
Senator Pershing.
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale.
Yes.
Senator Sears.
Yes.
Senator Starr.
Yes.
Senator Biholski.
Yes.
Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Weeks.
No.
Senator Westman,
Yes.
Senator White,
Yes.
Senator Williams.
No.
Senator Renner,
Yes.
Please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 25. Those voting nay, 5. 2/3 of the senators present having voted in favor of the passage of the bill, the governor's veto has been overridden. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I would move that the Senate message its actions on S80, an act relating to miscellaneous environmental conservation subjects, and S103, an act relating to amending prohibitions against discrimination, to the governor forthwith.
Now, the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate suspend your rules in order to message your actions taken on S80 and S103 to the governor forthwith. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you suspended your rules in order to message your actions taken on S80, an act relating to miscellaneous environmental conservation subjects, and S103, an act relating to amending the prohibitions against discrimination, to the governor forthwith. Senator from Chittenden Central.
At this time, I would ask that the Senate message its actions on H171, an act relating to adult protective services, H217, an act relating to child care, early education, workers' compensation, and unemployment insurance, H305, an act relating to professions and occupations regulated by the Office of Professional Regulation, H386, an act relating to approval of amendments of the Charter of the Town of Brattleboro, H494, an act relating to making appropriations for the support of government, H509, an act relating to approval of amendments to the voter qualification provisions of the Charter of the City of Burlington, and JRH6, joint resolution authorizing limited remote joint committee voting through the first Friday of the 2024 adjourned session, to the House forthwith.
Now, the senator from Chittenden Central has moved to suspend the rules in order to message your actions on the following bills to the House forthwith. H171, H217, H305, H386, H494, H509, and JRH6. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you've suspended your rules in order to message your actions taken on the following bills to the House forthwith. H171, an act relating to adult protective services. H217, an act relating to child care, early education, workers' compensation, and unemployment insurance. H305, an act relating to professions and occupations regulated by the Office of Professional Regulation. H386, an act relating to approval of amendments to the Charter of the Town of Brattleboro. H494, an act relating to making appropriations for the support of government. H509, an act relating to approval of amendments to the voter qualification provisions of the Charter of the City of Burlington. And JRH6, joint resolution authorizing limited remote joint committee voting through the first Friday of the 2024 adjourned session. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. So that brings us to the end of our business. I will thank everyone for coming today and acting on these important bills. I will make the motion pending announcements and begin with one myself. So pending announcements, I move that the Senate adjourn pursuant to JRS 29. And if I might lead off the announcements?
You may.
Thank you, Mr. President. The child care bill, which we overrode today, is, I believe, a historic achievement. We had hoped to celebrate that with an event tomorrow. We will still celebrate that with an event tomorrow at noon on the State House steps. All those interested in attending, please do. It will be, I think, a joyous celebration. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are there any further announcements? Senator from Addison.
Thank you. At the risk of being anticlimactic, I do have one request to help clear something off the calendar. We have 2 appointments that have not yet been approved. So I move that we suspend the rules and approve without discussion the 2 appointments on page 3353 of the calendar for approval as a pair, I guess, without debate. I think that was the right motion. Thank you, Mr. President.
And which spelling of pair? Sorry. The senator from Addison County has moved that the Senate suspend this rule. You don't have to suspend the rules to do this, I don't think. That the Senate approve the confirmations as found on page 3353 of today's Senate calendar. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have approved the confirmations as found on page 3353 of today's calendar. Now, the underlying question, pending further announcements, is shall the Senate adjourn pursuant to JRS 29? Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, the question is, shall the Senate adjourn pursuant to JRS 29? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and the Senate will stand adjournment pursuant to JRS 29.